Good day, colleagues. You're welcome to the 2020 virtual edition of the International Conference on Energy and Sustainable Environment. You're welcome to this keynote. Before I start, I would like to thank the chair of the LOC, Dr. Isado Ezima, as well as the secretary of the LOC, Dr. Olayinka Oloke, and my special good friend, Professor Eziyebim, for this invitation to deliver this keynote at this time via virtual medium. My keynote to you today is entitled Sustainability, Exploring the Influence of Green Buildings and Construction. My name is Fidelis Emuze. I'm the head or HOD, as you may want to call it, of Built Environment at the Central University of Technology, and as well the international coordinator of CIBTG 59 People in Construction. So you see why I'll be looking at green buildings and construction, because that is my area of focus. As we all know, the world, beyond the pandemic that's happening right now, has had to contend with global challenges, so some so-called global grand challenges. The world is not secured in terms of food, is not secured in terms of water. Some areas, especially in Southern Africa that we are, have got water restrictions, water issues. The world is not secured in terms of climate change, which is closely linked to this conference. Human health is challenged as well. Energy security is not there. The world is over dependent on fossil fuel, which is finite, and biodiversity. All these are spurred on or encouraged by population growth. If you look at the World Economic Forum's global grand challenges, you will see that in terms of resource needs, energy is important. We need to have alternative source of energy to be secured, and nothing that we do that did not require one form of energy or the other. Our environment, which construction is really having serious influence on it, is also important. Food security, you have people going hungry, for a range of reasons, some because of war, for example, in Yemen and Southern Sudan, and some for man-made reasons that beyond the focus of this keynote. Then you have shelter, a lot of homeless around us, a lot of people living in formal settlement, in shanties, in slums. You have space issues, you have water that I mentioned, you have clean water, drinkable water is a challenge. Then of course, beyond the resource needs, we have social needs as well, disaster resilience, governance, we have governance issues, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. If we look at the 50 or 54 or 52 countries in the continent of Africa now, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, you have governance issues in different spheres of government. Then you have health. We have to live in our well-being. We should not be compromised, but you have people really dealing with their health issues. Beyond the pandemic, you have people dying of malaria, etc., and all that. Then you have learning, which is important. Knowledge is light. Then you have prosperity and you have security. Crime is endemic and is fueled by a range of issues. So quickly, if we look at current world population now, we are getting close to 8 billion. These data are extracted on Saturday 27th, so it's a current data. And you will see that the population is increasing and is impacting upon carbon footprint and ecological footprint of what we do. Then when you look at in Nigeria, in terms of population, is number 7 right now. It's estimated, as at the data I started on Saturday, that we are more than 200 million people. The question is, can the resources and the amenities that infrastructure support 200 million people in Nigeria within the space that we have and other issues that we have to contend with. So in a nutshell, if we come back to our focus, you will see that global fossil carbon emission by sector, the building sector accounts for close to 10%. The building sector accounts for close to 10%, while transport accounts for 20.9%, power industry 38.5%, non-combustion 10%. I want to really emphasize that one way or the other, through manufacturing, through what we do on site, through material delivery and the supply chain, the construction sector and the architecture, engineering, construction sector have enormous impact or contribution to carbon emission. If you look at this 2016 data before, it says global fossil CO2 emission were more than 35 million tons in 2016. It is even much more than that right now. So it's something that is important that we have to address as a community of practice. Then what is GHG? For some of us, just to remind ourselves, GHG is any gaseous compound that is capable of absorbing and emitting infrared radiation, thereby allowing less heat to escape back to space and trapping it in the lower atmosphere. Among the GHG, you have carbon dioxide is a major component. It constitutes 76% of the GHG, to show you why we have to pay more attention to it. Methane, which comes primarily from agricultural products, constitutes 16%, and nitrous oxide 6%. That's according to the statistics. Then if you look at a broader view of the contribution, more statistics, you will see that electricity and heat constitute 31% of this emission. Manufacturing and construction, looking at it from a parochial view, narrow view, gives you 12.4%. But like I said, because of the supply chain cut across a lot of activities, the contribution of construction can be much more. So if you look at the classical economists, what they said, as far back as more than 200 years ago in 1798, they are already informing us, or our great-grandfathers, that overpopulation and economic growth leads to also occupations, that means scattered all around, severe labor and exposure to the seasons, like we have now. We have extreme weather conditions. Then you have extreme poverty. It's a major issue worldwide, not just in Africa, but in Asia and other places in Europe, Central Europe. You have bad nursing of children. You have malnutrition affecting children. You have great towns, mega cities like Lagos or Cairo. You have excesses of all kinds that may have even led to the current lockdown worldwide right now. And you have the whole train of common diseases and epidemics, wars, pestilence, plague, and famine. All these are linked to population growth. If you look at Matthew's basic theory, it says here clearly that we'll reach a crisis point when our population begin to outpace the resources. And friends, this is where we are now. The question we need to ask ourselves is global warming worth it? Should we just fold our hands and do nothing about it? What about our children? What kind of environment or climate do we want them to inherit? What about the economy? Do you want to bequeath an enslaving economy to them? What about the infrastructure that they require, the technology, the fifth industrial revolution? Are we key into it? Then what about people that require decent job and living? So we need all, as a collective, must address global warming. That is my assessment. If you look at these eminent speakers, what they have said, for example, so I've said, there has never been a time of greater promise or greater peril the time that we are living right now. When it comes to workers, because that's close to me, people in construction, close to my heart, we have another quote. It says, for workers, there are no jobs on the dead planet. So if you say you are looking for a job and you are not thinking of the environment, where are you going to get a job when the planet is no more existing? Emma said, we will never manage to reach climate targets if we don't create social fairness in the world, meaning social justice is also important. Then the immediate past Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, said, we are the first generation to be able to end poverty, which we are not even getting close to. Poverty is everywhere from Kano to Lagos. And the last generation that can take steps to avoid the worst impact of climate change. Future generation will judge us harshly if we fail to uphold our moral and historical responsibilities in this regard, including researchers and practitioners in the built environment. Elon Musk, that recently launched first private space shuttle to the space in the US from Florida, has this to say, and by the way, he's originally from South Africa, he's an American now, that's what we heard. He says, we are running the most dangerous experiment in history right now, which is to see how much carbon dioxide the atmosphere can handle before there is an environmental catastrophe. Do we want to wait for an environmental catastrophe? We have an earth catastrophe right now that the world is struggling to handle. Stephen Hawking, that recently left us when died, says we are in danger of destroying ourselves by greed and stupidity. Is that sentence familiar? I think it is. If you pick up any newspaper this day in Nigeria or Guardian or Punch, we cannot remain looking inwards at ourselves on a small increasing populated and overcrowded planet. We have to do something about it. He said this before he died. And I love this one very, very well because I know some of our people will think this is a luxury, but it's not a luxury. We have to look into the future. Every country needs a minister of the future. You have to plan for the future. You don't want the future to dictate to you. So, closing the basis for my presentation or keynote, we note that 200 for a long time now, the world population has been increasing, and the exponential increase in Nigeria population is also notable. Like I said on Saturday, this data that I observed this data, we have now more than 206 million in Nigeria. The question is, can our resources support it? And if yes, it can support it, what are we doing to harness it? This data says that while Nigeria is more than 206 million, and it is expected to grow by UN data. It says Nigeria constitutes 2.64% of the total world population, is ranked 7th, and the density is very high, as you can see on the screen, and the total land area as well. There are many countries that, in terms of land area, that are bigger than Nigeria. And of course, urbanization is roughly 52% of the population. And the median age in Nigeria is 18.1 years, according to. So, of course, like the rest of the world, Nigeria had to address Millennium Development Goals partially successfully, if I want to be optimistic. Then we are now dealing with the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have 17 SDGs that translate to 169 targets with indicators of how to measure the performance. Actually, the SDGs apply to all countries, and the SDGs also help us to see how to implement them, how to mobilize resources, finances, how to build capacity and transfer knowledge. In terms of construction and other extractive industry, how to have environmental sound technologies to preserve the planet. All these are there. in the SDGs. So it also recognizes new goals for tackling climate change or global warming. If you look at all the SDGs, a range of them have implications for what we do in the architectural, construction, and engineering industry. For example, when we create jobs, we are able to tackle poverty, we are able to tackle hunger. When we do our job properly, we are able to ensure that our workers have got good health and well-being. That is one of my research areas, strong one. And because of what we do, changing work method, changing processes, changing materials, what we do in the AEC industry also has implications for quality education, gender equality. We are noted to be a masculine industry. We have to encourage, we have to make the industry conducive for women in construction. Clean water and sanitation through our civil engineering works. We have work to do in our industry. Affordable and clean energy. The electrical engineers and mechatronics can come up with so many gadgets, but construction have to bring them to life in terms of implementation. Decent work and economic growth, we have strong implication, contributions to make. Construction constitutes between 6 and 10% of each individual country GDP. The industry, innovation, infrastructure, that is a very, very strong area for construction. And every one of them, more importantly, SDG 11, where you have sustainable cities and communities. Those are where we really have important roles to play as an industry, whether we are in the industry or we are academics. Of course, responsible consumption and production, we have important actions to take there. So these are the drivers. Let's pause for a minute and talk about the drivers for the SDG. Population, that's why I hammer on population at the beginning of the keynote. You have things that are called disruptions, okay? In terms of our planet, you have boundaries, you have climate, you have land, water, biodiversity. All those are grand challenges that I mentioned. You have technology as we're changing the way we live our life, socio-political doctrines, philosophies, how we govern ourselves, war and conflict, they're endemic. There are some countries now in Asia, so to speak, that are noted for conflict and war. In the last 20 to 30 years, there have always been one conflict or the other. Of course, the resource bank is being depleted. All these are disruptions that are driving the SDG agenda. So how can we move forward? Pressure groups, non-governmental organizations, and businesses can help us. The role of government, which they must play with the support of academia and research, is to formulate enabling policies and legislation that will help businesses, NGO, and other organizations to create a future that we all seek to have. Then when we do that through a focus on the SDG, we have new legislation that will feed into laws and regulations, especially in the construction industry. If you want to create a green economy, for example, you need legislation to back it up. If you want to create a circular economy, you need legislation to back it up. Developing economies are where we have a potential of serious growth. Then, of course, trade, and of course, we have to cater for our future generations. Then we must not forget that the COVID-19 pandemic will have an impact. The question I pose here is, how is the COVID-19 pandemic affecting you? In your workspace, we have a new terminology, WFH, work from home. Are you able to continue your economic engagement from home? So quickly, in terms of construction, we have many rating agencies now driving sustainability or sustainable construction or sustainability in the built environment. You have BREEAM that started in the UK in 1989. You have the Green Council South Africa here that are able to rate our buildings. And you have the LEEDs in the US. The question I'm posing here, that's why you see the question mark rotating, is do we have such an agency and entity in Nigeria? If not, why not? Why must we still tie ourselves to the Green Council in South Africa? Or what have we learned if we tie ourselves to them? Can we use that to leapfrog to create one that can be context specific and good for Nigeria context. Of course, all these criteria or categories addresses location and transportation, addresses energy, the focus of this conference, and atmosphere, indoor environmental quality, water efficiency, sustainable site and material resources. So it is important in the built environment for us to do this. Quickly, I would like to just give an example as a researcher. This is coming from a recent PhD that graduated, one of my PhD that graduated. This paper was presented at the ICESE conference in April, UK last year. It's just an abbreviation. It's about retrofitting, the challenges and solutions of retrofitting. Carbon emissions have implications for sustainable development. We all know that. And we have already outlined the fact that the built environment contributes significantly to CO2 emissions. And of course, it has multiple pathways. So in other words, it's important for us to retrofit, not just retrofit our existing buildings. It's important for us to find a way to encourage zero carbon emission buildings. So, of course, it was the study was based on MIS method, pragmatism, and wherein you collect both qualitative and quantitative data, and you triangulate your findings. And in this case, we have case studies wherein the student, the PhD candidate, the former PhD candidate was able to collect data. Quickly, I will just highlight, I will urge you to go through the presentation that we share with the organizers. There are challenges that has to be overcome, from technical challenges to some soft issues to investment challenges to building science and energy efficiency awareness, and more contractors and subcontractors that are supposed to implement the retrofit project. Also, we have legislation that government can address. We have human behavior as well. We have operational challenges as well. And of course, resistance from building owners. You know, they don't see the need, especially if they are constrained by finance. And they are also worried about, if they spend this amount of money on retrofitting this building, will they get someone to rent it at a premium? So these are the challenges that we discovered. So conclusively, in terms of government should help us in Nigeria and of course in Africa with policies that promote sustainability practices, especially concerning existing buildings, and government have got quite a number of buildings that can be retrofitted, and those buildings will be like a demonstration for others to emulate. They can create a platform for subsidized operation for retrofitting, for zero carbon buildings, and of course sustainable construction. The construction process itself contributes to carbon emission. Then they have to encourage how we re-energize in the positive direction our regulations, especially regarding environmental impact assessment and related, how we scope our project, and in terms of writing the requirements, you know, that the engineers and the architects will put in place. Of course, that can't be done in isolation. It must be done with public consultation. Then government also have a role of incentivizing the supply chain, so that the supply chain will begin to produce new products, new materials, alternative construction materials, not at exorbitant prices. Of course, helping, when you do that, you have local content that is encouraged. For us, contractors, designers, and manufacturers, some of us are academics, but we still have our foot out there working as either designer, advisors, consultant, and to contractors. We have to find a way to build competitive capacities through training. It is very important. Continuous learning or continuous professional development is highly relevant in the built environment. Then we have to develop skills that enable transformational change in the sector. Artisans, technicians, professionals, all are included. All need to be retrained and trained for us to produce green buildings and retrofit. For example, a material method that is good in Europe for retrofitting might actually be good in Zimbabwe or in Nigeria or in Ghana. Then we have to intensify protocols, procedures, and methods that will engender green buildings and construction. We have to intensify the verification and use of alternative construction materials. Local content is very, very important. It's part of sustainability. Use what is available, locally available. We have to intensify sustainable end of building life, deconstruction, you know. Therefore, researchers, you and I, if most people that I think will be in this conference will be practitioners and researchers, we have to pay attention to the following topics, encourage our PhDs to do that, encourage our masters to look at it, places, people, behavior in relation to sustainability, in relation to retrofitting, in relation to energy use, energy efficiency. You can use the university as a macrocosm to evaluate energy efficiency in buildings. You have to pay attention to infrastructure and engineering. How can we do it differently to be sustainable? Building performance and environment. We have to look at energy, flexible, renewable, and nuclear, where solar panels, etc. Design and ecological engineering. We have to pay attention to them. Modeling is very important in simulation before we begin to do things in reality. Health and well-being is important. Decarbonized construction equipment, most equipment that we are still using are using fossil fuel, diesel, etc. Can we have equipment that emits less, pollute less? We should also focus attention on decarbonized manufacture of construction materials such as cement. One thing is called embodied carbon. We have to reduce it. We have to create alternative materials without sacrificing functionalities and quality. Then we have to strive, though it might be difficult, to see how we can achieve zero physical waste on construction site, wherein everything that goes to that site is used. You don't send anything to landfill. So when we do that, we look at this comic, because we still have some skeptics, people that I don't want to mention. The president of one of the superpowers is not so convinced about sustainability as well as climate change. What if it's a big us? That means, what if climate change is a big lie and we create a better world for nothing? Nobody loses anything, because when we do that, we have energy independence. We preserve our rainforest, especially southern Nigeria is a rainforest. We do everything sustainably. We have green jobs, decent jobs. We have livable city, which enhances our earth. We have renewable energy, clean water, clean air, less pandemic. You know, we don't use masks and a face shield all the time. And of course, we have healthy children. That is what we end up with. So it's a win-win situation when we embrace sustainability in the built environment. So from South Africa, I would like to say thank you to the organizers of this conference once more. And I want to thank all the sources and authors I've consulted both online and my past colleagues in ICESE in the UK, Professor Chris Goss, Professor Leod, and others for using their materials. Thank you. I wish you a lovely conference.